Warriors raised among stars fought. The station hung in the dark between stars, a massive ring of metal and light that had been home to for as long as he could remember. He stood in the training hall, watching his reflection in the polished floor. Sweat dripped from his chin. His muscles ached from the morning drills. "Again," said Instructor Vex. The crystalline body chimed softly as she moved. Light bent through her transparent form, casting rainbows on the walls. "Your form is adequate, but you hesitate." Nodded and raised his practice blade. Across from him, his sparring partner shifted on 4 of his 6 limbs. That was faster than any human could be, and stronger too, but had learned that speed wasn't everything. They circled each other, lunged and didn't block where the attack was aimed. He blocked where would have to be a heartbeat later. The practice blades cracked together, stumbled, surprised, and swept his legs out from under him. "Interesting," Vex said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "You anticipated rather than reacted. This is not standard doctrine." "Sorry, Instructor." "Do not apologize for success. But tell me, how did you know where he would be?" "Thought about it. I watched his breathing. When he breathes in, he always attacks high first." Clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "You humans notice strange things." Myra jogged over from the next training mat. She was age 15 station years, with dark skin and bright eyes that missed nothing. "Is it strange if it works?" she asked. "It is strange that you watch breathing instead of weapons," replied, but there was respect in his tone. "Strange but effective." The training continued through the morning cycle, and Myra had been at the academy since they were small children, part of the first group of humans selected for the Sentinel program. They trained alongside 30 other species, all learning to be the Coalition's peacekeepers and defenders. The Coalition had kept peace across 1,000 worlds for 3,000 years. The Sentinels were the reason why. Barely remembered Earth. He had vague memories of blue sky and the smell of rain, but that was all. The academy was his home. His fellow cadets were his family. After training, and Myra went to the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there was Earth, but had never been allowed to visit. None of the human cadets had. "Do you ever wonder what it's like?" Myra asked, staring at the stars. "Earth." "Yeah, why we can't go back. Why they don't talk about it much." Shrugged. "Every species has a, we train here to learn Coalition unity. That's what Instructor Vex says. But visits his every rotation. So does Senna." She gestured to where their synthesis sat meditating, her telepathic thoughts a gentle hum that everyone nearby could feel. "Why not us?" Before could answer, alarms shrieked through the station. Red lights pulsed. Instructor Vex's voice boomed over the speakers. "All Sentinel cadets to the deployment bay. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." And Myra ran. They'd trained for this moment for years, but it had always been simulation. Now their hearts pounded with real fear and real excitement. In the deployment bay, cadets from every species gathered, pulling on armor and checking weapons. The atmosphere buzzed with nervous energy. Admiral and appeared on the central display. The Admiral's 6 arms moved in a complex gesture of authority. "A colony world has been attacked by a hostile force calling themselves the Void Reavers. They are well-armed and organized. Senior Sentinel units are engaged, but they need support. You have trained for this. Now you will prove yourselves." The cadets loaded into transport ships. The squad consisted of himself, Myra, Senna, and 2 twins named and Kel. They had trained together for 5 years. They knew each other's strengths and weaknesses better than they knew their own. The transport shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of the colony world. Smoke rose from burning buildings below. Energy weapons flashed in the streets. The transport dropped them on a rooftop, and they moved into formation immediately. "Remember your training," said, taking point. He wasn't officially squad leader, but everyone looked to him when decisions needed to be made quickly. Standard search and secure pattern. Watch your corners." They moved through the building, clearing rooms. The sounds of battle echoed from the streets below. When they reached the ground floor, they found civilians huddled in a storage area, 36 beings from 4 different species, all terrified. "We'll get you out," Myra promised. She had a way of making people feel safe even when everything was chaos. But then the Void Reavers attacked. They came through the front entrance in a wedge formation, firing pulse weapons that could cut through armor. Went down immediately, her crystalline body cracking. Kel screamed and charged forward, forgetting all training in his rage. "Fall back," ordered, following doctrine. "We cannot hold this position." But saw something else. He saw that the Void Reavers expected them to retreat through the back exit. 2 raiders were already moving to cut them off. If they followed doctrine, they would walk right into an ambush. "No," said everyone behind cover. Myra Senna, take the civilians up the stairs. Kel with me. "That is not proper procedure," protested. "Trust me." Maybe it was something in his voice. Maybe it was the way his eyes had gone cold and calculating. Nodded and followed orders. Did something no coalition soldier would do. Instead of retreating in formation, he attacked in apparent chaos. He broke cover and ran at an angle that exposed him to enemy fire but drew the raiders' attention away from his squad. And Kel used the distraction to flank from the side. The Void Reavers, confused by the unpredictable movement, hesitated for just a moment. That moment was enough. Took down 2 raiders. Kel, fighting with fury over his twin's injury, scattered the rest, rolled behind a pillar and fired at the raiders trying to flank them from the back exit. His shots were precise, targeted. He didn't waste ammunition. Within minutes, the fight was over. The civilians were safe, was badly injured but alive, and the Void Reavers were either dead or fleeing. Instructor Vex arrived with reinforcements. She looked at the scene, then at report. Explained what had happened. Vex listened in silence, her crystalline face unreadable. When he finished, she said simply, "You violated standard doctrine in 17 different ways." "Yes, instructor." "It worked." "Yes, instructor." "Why did you do it?" Struggled to put it into words. "I saw what they expected us to do, so I did something else, something they couldn't predict." Vex tilted her head, light refracting strangely through her form. "You saw inside their decision cycle and disrupted it. This is advanced tactical thinking. How did you learn this?" "I don't know, it just made sense." The battle for the colony world lasted 3 more days. Human cadets were scattered across different units, and reports began filtering back to the command center. Every single human squad had performed the same ways had. They followed doctrine until doctrine failed, and then they improvised. They took risks that seemed insane but somehow worked. They pushed themselves past exhaustion, past injury, past what should have been possible. The cadets were precise. They were strong. The synthesis could coordinate through telepathy, but the humans were adaptable in a way that made the senior commanders nervous. On the 4th day, the Void Reavers retreated. The colony was saved. The cadets returned to the academy station as heroes, but noticed something strange. The instructors looked at the human cadets differently now. There was caution in their eyes, maybe even fear. That night couldn't sleep. He went to the station's data archives and searched for information about Earth. Most files were sealed. The ones he could access were basic. Earth was a Class 5 world with standard gravity and oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. It had been contacted 15 years ago and had joined the coalition peacefully. Human children had volunteered for the Sentinel program. But when searched deeper, using access codes he probably wasn't supposed to have, he found something else. A note in Admiral N's personal log, partially corrupted but still readable. The human capacity for violence is unlike anything in coalition history. Recommend continued monitoring. Under no circumstances should they be allowed to organize independently or learn their full history. The children must never know what their species is capable of. His hands shook as he read it. What did it mean? What was Earth's history that they weren't allowed to know? He went to find Myra and found her in the observation deck, staring at the stars again. "I think something is wrong," he said. "I know," she replied. "I've been thinking about it all day. Did you notice during the battle, when got hit, Kel went crazy with grief? When thought he was going to die, he froze, but we didn't. You and me and the other humans, we kept going like we'd done it 1,000 times before. Maybe we're just better at handling stress. Or maybe we're used to it. Maybe our species is used to it." She turned to face him. "What if there's a reason they don't let us go home? What if there's something about Earth they don't want us to know?" Before could respond, the alarm sounded again. But this time they were different. These were the station's emergency defense alarms. They were under attack. The cadets rushed to their positions. Through the viewports could see ships approaching, dozens of them, all marked with the same symbol the Void Reavers had used. "This is impossible," Instructor Vex said, her voice tense. "This station's location is classified. They should not be able to find us." But they had, and as the first weapon's impacts shook the station, realized something terrifying. The Void Reavers weren't attacking randomly. They were targeting specific sections of the station, the sections where human cadets lived and trained. Someone wanted humans dead, and needed to find out why. The battle for the Academy station began. Void Reaver boarding parties breached the hull in 6 places. Senior Sentinels moved to intercept, but the Raiders were ready for them. They had studied coalition tactics. They knew every proper response. But they hadn't studied humans. Gathered every human cadet he could find. There were 43 of them, ranging in age from 13 to 17 station years. They had no official authority, but when spoke, they listened. "They know how coalition soldiers fight," he said. "So we fight differently. No formations, no doctrine. We think like them and then we do what they won't expect. We protect this station and everyone on it." Myra stepped forward. "What do you need us to do?" Smiled grimly. "Whatever works." The human cadets scattered through the station in small groups. They set ambushes in places no one should be. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used weapons in ways they weren't designed to be used. When Void Reavers expected them to defend, they attacked. When Raiders expected attack, humans vanished into the station's maintenance tunnels. It was chaos. It was improvisation. It was everything the Coalition had spent 3,000 years trying to eliminate from warfare. And it worked. But people died. 3 human cadets fell in the first hour. The twins' home unit was overrun. Senna sacrificed herself to save a group of younger cadets, using her telepathy to blind the Raiders while they escaped. Felt each loss like a physical blow, but he couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. The Void Reavers kept coming, and if the Academy fell, thousands would die. Finally, after 6 hours of desperate fighting, Coalition reinforcements arrived. The Void Reavers retreated to their ships and fled. The station was saved, but barely. Fires burned in 3 sectors. The hull was breached in a dozen places, and the cost in lives had been terrible. Admiral and found sitting in the ruins of the training hall. The young human was covered in blood, some his own, most not. He stared at his hands like he didn't recognize them. "You held the station when senior units could not," and said. His 6 arms hung at his sides in a gesture of respect. "Your tactics were unorthodox, dangerous, but effective. We did what we had to do." "Yes, that is what concerns me." The Admiral moved closer. "Do you know what you are, young? Do you know what your species is? We're humans, we're sentinels. You are weapons, the most effective weapons evolution ever created." Anne's voice was sad. "Your world is what we call a Class 12. Your species survived 10,000 years of continuous warfare. You evolved to be persistent predators, chasing prey until it died of exhaustion. Every threat your world could create, you overcame. You learned to kill with stones and sticks, then with bronze and iron, then with fire and atom. By the time we found you, your species had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times, and each time pulled back from the brink. Felt cold. You're saying we're violent, that we're dangerous. I am saying you are survivors, and survivors are the most dangerous beings in the universe. And gestured around at the destroyed training hall. We took your children to train them, to give them purpose, to channel what you are into something useful. We thought if we raised you away from Earth, you would be coalition soldiers. We were wrong. You are still human, and humans are born knowing how to fight. You took us. The words came out flat. You stole us from our families. We saved you, and we saved the galaxy from you. Before could respond, every screen in the station flickered to life. A face appeared. A human face, older, with eyes that had seen too much. The man wore makeshift armor marked with the Void Reaver symbol. My name is Commander Reeve, the man said, and I am here to tell you a truth the Coalition has hidden. 15 years ago, they came to Earth. They said they wanted peace. They said they wanted cultural exchange. Then they took our children, thousands of them. They told us they had died in an accident during the first contact. They lied. The screen showed images. A younger Reeve in Earth military uniform, ships descending from the sky, children being loaded into transports while parents screamed, coalition soldiers enforcing order. They took our children to make weapons, Reeve continued. They saw what humanity was capable of and they feared it, so they tried to control it, to use it. His face hardened. I was part of that first contact crew. I've spent 15 years learning what they really are, and now I'm going to show them what monsters Earth really creates. I'm going to show them what happens when you steal humanity's children. The transmission ended. Silence filled the station. Looked at Admiral N. Is it true? The Admiral's arms moved in a gesture of regret. Yes. Then we're not sentinels, we're prisoners. You are protectors, the galaxy needs you. The galaxy stole us. Myra appeared in the doorway, a dozen other human cadets behind her. They had all seen the transmission. They all knew the truth now. What do we do? Myra asked quietly. Stood, his body ached. His heart was heavy with loss and anger, but his mind was clear. He looked at his fellow humans, then at the Admiral. We do what we've always done, he said. We survive, we protect, and we find out who we really are. The station's lights flickered. In the dark between stars, 40 human children who had learned they were weapons began to understand what that meant. And somewhere out in the void, Commander Reeve gathered his forces for a war that would show the galaxy exactly what humanity could do when pushed too far. The story was just beginning. The summons came 3 days after Commander Reeve's transmission. The Coalition High Council wanted answers, and they wanted to see the human cadets with their own eyes. And Myra stood in the transport ship with 20 other humans, all silent, all thinking about what they'd learned. Do you think our families are still alive? Asked one of the younger cadets. She was only 13 station years, small and quick. Do you think they remember us? Of course they remember, Myra said gently. Parents don't forget their children. But wasn't so sure. 15 years was a long time, and if the Coalition had told Earth's people their children were dead, maybe they'd moved on. Maybe they'd had to. The transport docked at Coalition Central, a massive station that served as the government's headquarters. Had never been here before. Few cadets had. The corridors were wide and grand, decorated with art from 1,000 worlds. Beings from hundreds of species moved through the halls, conducting the business of an empire that stretched across the stars. They were brought to a council chamber. The High Council consisted of representatives from the 30 founding species of the Coalition. They sat in a semicircle on elevated platforms, looking down at the humans like judges at a trial. Chancellor, a synthesis whose telepathic presence felt like pressure behind eyes, spoke first. You have served the Coalition with honor. Your actions at the Academy Station saved countless lives. For this, we are grateful. But said it wasn't a question. But the revelations about your recruitment have created difficulties. Many species now fear humanity. They see your combat effectiveness, and they worry about what it means for coalition stability. Myra stepped forward. You kidnapped us. You told our parents we were dead, and now you're worried about stability. Murmurs ran through the council. No cadet had ever spoken so directly to the High Council before, but Myra's eyes blazed with anger, and she didn't back down. We did what was necessary, said Counselor Thrace, whose crystalline body was etched with age. Your species was discovered at a critical moment in its development. You had just survived a global conflict that nearly ended your civilization. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical agents. The death toll was in the billions. Your leaders were preparing for another war, even worse than the last. We saw where your species was headed. Extinction or ascension to the stars, but still carrying all that violence with you. So you took children to prevent that? Asked. We took children to save them, and to show humanity a different path. The children we took were orphans from the war, refugees, those who had no one left. We gave them purpose. We gave them a future. You gave them lies, Myra said. Admiral and entered the chamber. The council must understand what these humans achieved. They held the academy against a force that should have overwhelmed them, not through strength or speed, but through tactical innovation that exceeded anything in coalition doctrine. They adapted in real time to threats we could not predict. This is not just training. This is who they are. Chancellor's telepathic presence intensified. That is precisely what concerns us. The coalition has maintained peace through predictability, through doctrine, through structure. Humanity represents chaos. Useful chaos, perhaps, but dangerous nonetheless. Then send us home, said. If we're so dangerous, send us back to Earth. Silence fell over the chamber. The counselors looked at each other, finally spoke again. That is not possible. Why not? Because Commander Reeve has made Earth his target. He believes the coalition is his enemy, and he will use you to prove his point. If you return now, you will be caught in the middle of a war between Reeve's forces and coalition peacekeepers. You mean you're invading Earth, Myra said flatly. We mean we are protecting it from a terrorist who would see it burn to make a point. Felt sick. Everything was spinning out of control. They'd learned the truth about their origins only to discover they still couldn't go home, still couldn't see their families if those families even existed anymore. We want to help, he said finally, but not as prisoners, not as weapons you keep in a box until you need us. We want to know about Earth. We want access to the sealed files, and we want a choice about our futures. The counselors conferred in whispers and telepathic murmurs. Finally, Chancellor nodded. Agreed. You will have access to Earth's history, all of it. And when this crisis with Reeve is resolved, you may choose whether to remain as sentinels or return to Earth. The synthesis paused. But I warn you, what you learn may not bring you comfort. Your species' history is filled with darkness. We'll take our chances, said. They were given quarters in Coalition Central and access to the archives. For the next 2 days, and the other humans did nothing but read. They learned about Earth's history, and Chancellor had been right. It was dark. They learned about wars that killed millions, about genocides and slavery and cruelty beyond imagination. They learned that humans had split atoms to create weapons that could burn cities in seconds, that they'd created diseases to use against each other, that for most of their history, humans had been at war with other humans. But they also learned about what came after, about how humans had looked at what they'd done and decided to change, about peace treaties and reconciliation, about the long, hard work of learning to coexist, about how Earth had finally achieved a fragile global unity just years before the coalition arrived. We're not monsters, Myra said. reading a document about Earth's truth and reconciliation processes. We're people who learn from our mistakes. Maybe that's why they're afraid of us, suggested. We know how bad things can get, and we know how to survive it. Found something else in the archives, a file on Commander Reeve. It wasn't sealed like the others, but it should have been. Read it 3 times, not wanting to believe what he saw. Reeve had been part of the first contact crew, that was true. But he hadn't been kidnapped or lied to. He'd been part of a secret coalition research program. They'd wanted to study human psychology, to understand what made humans so effective in combat. So they'd taken Reeve and subjected him to experiments. They'd put him in combat simulations, pushed him to his breaking point again and again, studied how he adapted and survived. They'd tortured him in the name of science. And when he'd finally escaped, he'd taken coalition technology with him and disappeared into the outer systems to build his Void Reaver force. The coalition created him, said, showing Myra the file. They made him into exactly what they feared humans would become. Before Myra could respond, alarms blared through Coalition Central, and the others rushed to the command center, where Admiral stood before a massive tactical display. Reeve's fleet is moving, the Admiral said. He's heading for Earth, and he's broadcasting a message to every human settlement in Coalition space. He's calling them to join him, to take revenge for the stolen children. On the display, Earth hung in space, blue and green and beautiful. The planet he'd never really known, and Reeve was going to attack it to prove a point. How long until he arrives? Asked. 36 hours. We're mobilizing a defense fleet, but they may not arrive in time. Then send us, said. Send the human sentinels. We can get there faster in light transports. We can organize Earth's defenses. Earth's defenses. Chancellor materialized beside them, his telepathic form shimmering. Earth gave up its weapons after the last global war. They are a peaceful world now. They have nothing to defend themselves with. They have people, said, and if humans are as good at surviving as you say, they'll find a way. The counselors debated for precious minutes. Finally, they agreed. The human sentinels would go to Earth, not as invaders or kidnappers, but as defenders, as children coming home. The transport ships launched within the hour. 43 humans, most of whom had no memory of Earth, racing to save a world they'd been stolen from, sat in the lead ship next to Myra, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. What do we say to them? Myra asked. Our families, if they're still there, what do we tell them? The truth, said, that we're sorry, that we're here, that we're going to protect them. Do you think they'll forgive the coalition? Thought about that, about the stolen years, the lies, the pain. I don't know, but I think we have to try to forgive ourselves first. The ships entered Earth's atmosphere over a region called North America. Communication channels were chaos. Earth's people had received Reeve's message. They knew their children were alive. They knew the coalition had lied. And they knew a battle was coming. The transport landed in an open area near a city that the files called New York, stepped out onto Earth's soil for the first time in 15 years. The gravity felt right. The air smelled like growing things and water and life. Overhead, the sky was impossibly blue. People were waiting, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They stared at the young humans in coalition armor, and the young humans stared back. For a moment, no one moved. Then a woman broke from the crowd. She was older, with gray in her hair, but her eyes were Myra's eyes. She called out, using a name Myra hadn't heard in 15 years. Is that you? Myra's hand flew to her mouth. Mom. They ran toward each other. When they collided, both were crying. All around, other reunions were happening. Parents who'd thought their children were dead, children who barely remembered their parents, all coming together in tears and joy and grief for the lost years. Stood apart watching. No one came for him. He'd checked the files. His parents had died in the war before the coalition arrived. He really had been an orphan. But then an older man approached. He was tall, with military bearing, and he looked at with recognition. "You look like your father," he said. "I served with him before." "You knew my parents?" "I knew them well. They saved my life more times than I can count." The man extended his hand. "Welcome home, son. I'm General, and we've got a lot to talk about and not much time." General took and the other sentinels to a military base. It looked abandoned, outdated. "After the coalition made contact, we decommissioned most of our weapons," explained. "They said we didn't need them anymore, that the coalition would protect us. Seems they were wrong about that." "How can we help?" asked. "Reeves' fleet will be here in less than a day." "We've been reactivating old defense systems. Nothing compared to what the coalition has, but better than nothing. The problem is coordination. We haven't fought a battle in 15 years. Our people are civilians now. They've forgotten how to be soldiers." "We haven't," Myra said. She and her mother stood together holding hands. "We've done nothing but train for this." "Against coalition doctrine and tactics," said. "Reeve was one of us. He knows how Earth fights, or knew back when we still fought." Looked at the other human sentinels. They'd been raised by the coalition, trained in coalition methods, but they were still human, and humans adapted. "Then we teach you coalition tactics," he said, "and you teach us how Earth fights. We combine them. In less than a day. We're human, we improvise." The next hours were a blur of activity. The sentinels spread across Earth's defense network, teaching what they knew. Earth's people, rusty but not broken, relearned old skills. They brought ancient satellites online. They repaired missile batteries that hadn't fired in a decade. They organized civilian evacuation plans with efficiency that surprised even. "Your people are good at this," he told General. "We had to be," replied. "We spent 10,000 years at war with ourselves. We learned every lesson the hard way." He paused. "The coalition saw that history and decided we were too dangerous. Maybe they were right, but they forgot something important." "What?" "We learned to stop. That was the hardest lesson of all." As Earth's sun set, painting the sky orange and red, stood on a rooftop with Myra. Below, people worked frantically to prepare. Above, stars began to appear. "I've been thinking," Myra said, "about what the Admiral told you, that we're weapons, that we're born knowing how to fight. And I think he's wrong. I think we're born knowing how to survive. Fighting is just a part of that, but so is adapting, and changing, and choosing to be better than we were." "You sound like a philosopher." "I sound like someone who just met her mother for the first time in 15 years and realized I have a choice. I can be angry about what was stolen, or I can be grateful for what I still have. I can be a weapon, or I can be something else." "What do you want to be?" Myra smiled. "I want to be human, whatever that means." The scanners picked up Reeves' fleet an hour before dawn. They came out of jump space on the edge of the solar system, dozens of ships carrying weapons meant to punish Earth for the coalition's sins. Reeves' face appeared on every screen on the planet. "People of Earth," he said, "the coalition stole our children. They lied to us. They treated us like savages who needed to be controlled. Today, we show them what happens when you corner a predator. Today, we show them what humanity can do when we stop holding back." "He's going to destroy us to prove a point," General said grimly. "No," said, watching the tactical display. "He's not. Look at his formation. Those ships aren't positioned for bombardment. They're positioned to fight coalition vessels." "The coalition fleet isn't here yet." "Exactly. He's waiting for them. He's using Earth as bait." His mind raced, seeing patterns, understanding strategy. "He wants the coalition to come defend us. He wants a battle in Earth's orbit, and he doesn't care how many of us die in the crossfire." "Then what do we do?" Looked at Myra, at all the faces watching him. Human faces. People who'd survived everything history could throw at them and were still standing. "We change the game," he said. We show Reeve and the Coalition something they've both forgotten. We show them what humans fight for. Stood in Earth's Defense Command Center, surrounded by screens showing Reeve's fleet advancing toward the planet. They had maybe 2 hours before the shooting started. The Coalition's defense fleet was still 6 hours out. Earth's reactivated weapons were functional but old, designed for a different kind of war. "We can't win by fighting," said to General and the other human sentinels. "Reeve has Coalition technology, better ships, better weapons. If we try to match him in direct combat, we lose." "So we don't fight?" asked. "We do what humans do best. We survive, and we make him question everything," turned to Myra. "You said you wanted to be more than a weapon. Here's our chance." Myra nodded slowly, understanding. "We talked to him." "He won't listen," objected. "Reeve spent years being tortured by the Coalition. He's beyond reasoning." "Maybe," said, "but he's still human, and humans can change. We have to try." They opened a channel to Reeve's flagship. It took several attempts before he accepted the communication. When his face appeared on screen, saw the scars, the hard lines around his eyes, the damage that had been done to him. But he also saw something else: pain. And underneath it, hope that someone would understand. "Commander Reeve," said, "my name is, I'm one of the children the Coalition took from Earth, one of the weapons they created." Reeve's expression didn't change. "Then you understand why I'm doing this." "I understand you're angry. I understand you were hurt. But attacking Earth won't fix what they did to you. It will just prove the Coalition was right to fear us. The Coalition deserves to fear us. They deserve to understand what they created." "They already understand," Myra stepped forward, joining on screen. "We showed them at the Academy Station. We showed them that humans can be effective soldiers. But Commander, we also showed them something else. We showed them we fight for each other. We protect. We don't destroy." Pretty words from children who don't know what war really is. "We know what the Coalition."